Hi, everybody, and welcome to TLDC. This is the first installment of the Learning Technologies show on TLDCast. So I am your host, Cara North, and the lady next to me probably needs no introduction, but I will let her go ahead and introduce herself. Who are you?
Who am I? Sorry, I'm just getting over a cold. So if you hear me like sniffling and stuff, that's what's happening. I was flying. So hi, everyone. I'm Mel. I am a learning experience designer. I guess my actual now job at work is learning experience design manager. But I'm still doing all my design and development stuff outside of work. So hi.
Very cool. Well, welcome again. If you follow people on Twitter, LinkedIn, again, Mel probably still does not need an introduction. I think she's been a little bit too modest, but I invited her here today to talk about a tool called Adobe XD. And she had the privilege of being invited by Adobe in the last couple of weeks to actually go and show off how she builds with Adobe XD. It was amazing to watch that. I enjoyed watching it, Mel. You build your prototypes on there, and I learned a lot just by watching you. So without further ado, I think we need to just go ahead and hop into the tool. So Mel, if you would be kind enough just to maybe share your screen, and as you're doing that, I want to share a little nugget of wisdom. So do you guys know why it's called Adobe XD? Any guesses? And this is, again, a very corny joke. It's coming. It's called Adobe XD because it's laughing at me.
Oh,
yeah, because
it's like the X, like the eyes and the.
To say, Mel, I tried to use it maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago, and I just had a beast of a time with it. And I said, okay, this thing is called Adobe XD because it's laughing at me. So again, that's just a joke. Please, it's not official. So let's go ahead and hop in and see what you're doing here. So this is is this the fake wedding website, or what are we looking at here?
So this is the second wedding one because my partner, who's an engineer, he's building some of these designs that I'm creating after I'm working on them. And so he really wanted me to build like a brutalist theme. And I already did like a really pretty, like flowery, like wedding theme. And people are probably wondering, like, why are you not building e-learning? I feel like that's like the one thing, like, I was afraid people are going to be like, what's going on? Are you not doing e-learning anymore? And for me, I think that one of the things that's great to build your skills if you're in the learning industry, it doesn't mean you have to focus on learning all the time. So for me, like, to build my skills in this tool, that those skills are then transferable to like designing e-learning. It's really important just so you don't get burnt out, because sometimes it's like, okay, I live learning 24/7 and like, I just need a little in my life. So I'm doing this, but I'm also at the same time working on an e-learning project as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point that you bring up about just trying different tools. Again, I know he's not here, but my friend Joe Suarez always says that if you are building e-learning for development, then you are pretty much a web developer. I mean, we are publishing things for the web, so ways that we can incorporate and grow that skill set, I think, is really, really imperative. So yeah. Oh, go ahead.
And there's there's also something else I wanted to share. Like, if you're looking to build your skills in Adobe XD, there's a lot of XD resources, and there's also a challenge going on that just opened today. It just opened actually at 8 o'clock, so 4 minutes ago. So if I refresh my screen, they do a daily creative challenge. It's kind of like if you've done like the e-learning heroes challenges for Storyline, except they have one every day. And then you can submit them all by April 29th, and people will give you feedback on these. So awesome. If you come to this site here, and I think this is a good way to open up kind of like before we get into the tool, the first challenge is just to create an interactive drop-down menu. So it's like a little snippet of something. You can get a template to get started, to like look at what that looks like, and then make your own and make it your own. And then it's kind of like building your skills up little by little. And then they have a Discord that's here that has, I think, a few hundred people, but they're moving some people. I think they have Slack at the same time, but they're trying out Discord. So they have thousands of people on their Slack, and I think people are slowly trickling into here. So you can see they just posted the challenge. So if anyone's interested in building their skills in XD, this is a great outlet and you'll get feedback. They even have design feedback. So for me, I've been asking for feedback on my designs, and people will let you know, like, hey, like maybe try another font, maybe try another color, like this would be more accessible, or maybe this user flow doesn't really work, like maybe try this. So it's just a really great outlet to come in like a safe spot. And they've got people from Adobe here who moderate everything, which is great. And they're mentors as well.
Very cool. So this feedback that you get, is it typically like a time? So if you know you post something to that particular forum, is there any expectation you'll get something within 28 to 48 hours, or is it just kind of people drop it in as they can, or what does that look like?
Yeah, people definitely drop it in as they can. It's like very informal. It's just like share something and then people give you feedback. So I can show you something that I asked for feedback on. I don't know if I'll be able to scroll up all the way. But for instance, in my wedding theme, this one that I created, if I scroll down here, I have this like RSVP form. So with this form, I have these underlines here, and then I have this pink in the background. So before I took the underlines away because I thought that maybe it was just too many underlines, like it was distracting to the eye. So I was like, I don't know, like something feels off. So I posted a picture of what my design was in the Discord channel, and someone said, you know, that pink color that you have standing alone is not accessible. Someone who maybe doesn't have a great monitor won't be able to see it. They won't know it's like a form field. So that's some of the really good feedback that you get. So that helped me improve my design, because like I'm also doing this on mobile. So I've got the mobile form over here, up here. And so I'm gonna, here it is. I'm gonna make sure like it's consistent across so that it's accessible, because some people might be able to see that pink, and if they can't see the pink, at least they know that this is a form field because of the underline. And when you're thinking about this, you're like, okay, what does that have to do with e-learning? It applies across all web experiences, and not just web experiences, just experiences like in general that have a graphic user interface. So like you're thinking about VR, you're thinking about all these things. If someone can't use the thing that you've created for people to learn, they're not going to be able to then apply what they learn. So if you're putting a blocker in their way, such as not making something accessible, that they don't know how to click on it, it's not going to be usable. And that's another really important piece when it comes to like e-learning design. Like you have to think about, how is the person going to interact with this product? What does it look like that they're using it in their day? What is that experience? So you want to make sure that your design works for them before you go into development, because then it will cost so many hours to go back and like change things. So for me, it's just really important to do the design up front. And sorry, I'm talking a lot. Does anyone have questions so far?
No, you're fine. I just want to piggyback on a comment you made, and then there is a question I'd like for you to address through the chat. Absolutely, I agree with it. Whole accessibility piece, and shamefully on me, I didn't really take it as more seriously until I became a higher education ID. And for us, I mean, it's an absolute. We have to make sure everything is accessible, because we don't know who that online student is on the other side of that online course that I'm working on. So if that is the case, there you can Google Section 508 ADA compliance lawsuits against universities, and you will see a ton of them out there. So it's much better to be proactive on that piece. So I agree with you on that. Now, we have a little sidebar here in the chat, and I'm sure you're reading it right now, Mel.
I'm looking.
XD free, or is it $50 a month? So what we got here?
It's free for one. I think one project you can put through review. So I think if you want to add more, then you have to have an Adobe account. That's my understanding. So it is free for one project. I think you could probably do multiple projects like locally, but I think to put it through review, you can only have one, I'm pretty sure. But I pay for my Adobe Creative Cloud, so I'm not like 100% positive, but I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, we have Creative Cloud here at the university, so I'm a little bit spoiled. I can't say anything about that. And Shiashi has a really good point about the web guidelines too. So now I know who will be another guest, hopefully in a couple months on this show to talk about this. So thanks, Shiashi. I'm putting you in the hot seat to come talk about that sometime. So
yeah, and with this too, like one of the best benefits of XD is when you're looking at accessibility and different things like that, there's plugins that will help you. So for instance, there's one called Stark, and it will allow you to do a colorblind simulation and check contrast. So if I select just this text box and I want to see, I think I may have to select more than one thing. So let's see really quick. I'm going to have to, I'm going to have to ungroup this. Let's see. So if I select this and then I go to Stark and I want to check the contrast, it's so you can see like it meets the AA standard and AAA standard. So this is something that's really great because it's integrated in here, so you can see if the contrast is works well for the design. So there's just a lot of built-in things like that. And like when it's really weird because a few years ago, I would have never talked about doing design before development. Like, I think there was this trend of like, everyone just does rapid development. Like maybe they have like a PowerPoint, but just having this kind of workflow has completely changed the way that I design and has made it better for like my learners and my users, because I'm doing my due diligence and planning this out and then having them test the experience and then, you know, making sure that everything works for them instead of just, you know, okay, like we know what the person needs to be able to do. Here's the content. Let's put it in an e-learning, which is what I used to do. And now and this also saves me so much development time up front because I'm planning everything and then I know what it's going to look like.
Cool. And that's actually what I was going to ask you to talk a little bit about expand on that, being part of your project day-to-day and your management. And I know now that you are a manager, is this a process that you've adopted for your team? Do you kind of let them make their own decisions with this? What does that look like?
I think for any job, I think that there needs to be a process for designing before going into development. When you're doing e-learning or, you know, any kind of learning solution in general, because and it has to be more than design of like designing what's content, what are the, like if you're doing a quiz, like what are the quiz questions and what are the answers? Like it has to go beyond that. The way that I do things is I start with like the needs analysis, then I move into working with a subject matter expert, where I just work on them with the content. So maybe they have content already, maybe they don't, and then align that with like the learning objectives. And then what I do after we've had that conversation and gone through all the content is starting to create, okay, what do the activities look like text-wise? And before I go into like the visual design piece. So like, what does the copy look like? If it is a quiz, like what are the questions? What are the answers? And then I also start to think about the design after that. So wireframe. So a wireframe is basically just like an outline of like what the design might look like before you put in all of like the pictures and the colors and different things like that. So I start with that and I collaborate with them to make sure that the content makes sense in relation to the design. So here's what the copy is going to be on this. So say it's like a learning portal or something like that. Here's what the copy is going to be. Here's where these different things are going to go, but not what they look like, because that's more the user interface piece. The experience piece, how someone's going to find it, how they're going to interact with it, that's more of like the user experience piece. So the user interface is more like, what does it visually look like?
I think that's a great distinction. And I like that you kind of expanded on that, because that really does make sense, being able to kind of pivot between the two and doing all of that work on the front end. And then that way, once everything kind of gets approved and matched and goes through usability and all that, it makes a lot of great sense. If I may, I'm going to just pivot. We got a great question from J Rock. He is interested if you will talk a little bit more about switching from an individual contributor to a manager. His concern is sounds like he's a builder. I'm a builder. I know that obviously you're a builder too. He's concerned about making that switch from being a builder as an ID as opposed to like a manager. So what does that look like?
Yeah, and it's interesting because so for me, I think every person's going to be different, and what they want in their career is going to be different. For me, like I absolutely for my career love leading. It's something that I get so much fulfillment out of, removing barriers for people and helping them to get to their next, part in their career, and figuring out processes and simplifying things. Like most people don't see that when they see me on LinkedIn, because they see me making stuff and they see like, and everyone's like, well, don't you miss development? Like, don't you miss design? And for me, it's really, it's a weird thing because that's my hobby. Like design is my hobby and developing is my hobby and playing with technology is my hobby. It's something that I like to have full control over, experimenting and trying those things, which is really hard to do, I think, in a corporate environment if you're on like projects and things like that. So for me, I like that I get to do both. So outside of work, I work on my design. I take what I learned and I bring that to other people, whether it's my team or coworkers or people on LinkedIn, whatever. And then in my job, I get to lead, and that's the most fulfilling thing to me because on like LinkedIn and like the different platforms, it seems like it's like it feels like it's about me because I'm sharing my projects. But like at work, it's about other people, and it's about helping other people and helping the team and helping the business. So yeah, that's a long explanation. But I think if you love designing, like you have to have design somewhere in your life.
I think that's a great way of putting it. And like you said, not everybody sees kind of the different layers of the onion, right? Of how complex we are and what we do at work day to day. And then obviously with our free time. So I really appreciate that explanation. I have a question about a specific XD use case. So I don't know if you'd be kind enough if you wanted to share your screen again and talk about this. Helena asked about variables and triggers. She says that she's a novice in XD, so she was wondering if there's an option for that and what that looks like.
Let me share really quick.
Sure.
So there's not variables and triggers per se. So let me open up, let me get that Brutalist one that I'm kind of working on. So what this one is in the Brutalist design here, and this is in a like low fidelity wireframe, like that's what they call it. So low fidelity means like there's not pictures and like what it's actually going to look like. So there's not the option to do like super complex branching or anything like that right now. I don't know what the roadmap looks like. I feel they're constantly updating the tool. And like even this week, I just noticed there's a record video option, which I had never seen there before. They're coming out with like a super top secret thing in May that they've been dropping hints about. But in order to do prototyping, if you want to do kind of something similar, there's a design tab. So design is just where you're creating your objects and laying everything out. And then prototype is the interactivity piece. So prototype is where you can do animations, transitions, overlays, which are like overlaying like a modal or a pop-up on top of something. And you can also go to different screens. So what you do if you want some interactivity, like I want someone to click on this RSVP button, and then when they click on this, I'm going to overlay this. So I would go when the person taps this trigger, and I want this area to overlay on top of this. So right now, and you can have an animation with it, but I think it looks good with no animation. So you can see this all just went blank because this is making a transparent area. So if I go into design and maybe I just want this, like, let's make this like insanely ugly. So if I want this to overlay on top, what I do is go back to this, go to prototype, and you can see this is going to go to this. So if I click play and I'm in this, you'll see that. So you can mock things up and prototype them. It's just it's not like going to be overly complex. Like I can have this, then go to something else, but I can't have the one button go to multiple things is the only like depending on like what you do, or else you'd have to duplicate screens.
Looking at this, I was curious. A big thing that we use here is obviously we use the Articulate Review. So after I build something in Storyline, I publish it to review and get comments from faculty, whomever. What does this look like on the review side? If you send this out for somebody to review, what does that look like?
So for this, the review is, there's two different types of review. So there's Share for Development, which has a review feature, but also lets you download the different assets in here, such as pictures or icons. And then there's Share for Review, which is more for designers or your customer or whoever. So if I click Share for Review, I can allow comments, which will allow you to make comments wherever you want on the screen. I can show hotspot hints. So hotspot hints are, if this thing is in prototype mode, you'll be able to see where to click. And then navigation controls, I think, is like around the screen. So I'll just show you this really quick. You can require a password for it too. So if you want to make a password, and it'll take a minute because it's putting everything together that's in this file, and I have really big pictures. So then you can copy the link or you can embed it in something, which is also pretty cool. So if I open this, I'll be able to show you the review piece.
Sure.
So this is the review here. So you've got this little pin that you can drag to different areas. So you can say, you can be like, make the padding 10 pixels. Or I don't know. I never know like what I'm going to do on the fly. And then you can see who did it, and you can add and comment back to them. And then you can do resolve if you want to resolve it.
Neat. Okay, so you can actually go to specific pieces of it instead of it just being like the one big picture or slide or what have you. You can pick little pieces. That's really neat.
Yeah, and there's even a filter so you can see like who the reviewers are, the different time, and the status of the different things. And then the other thing that I was talking about is in regards to the hotspots. So this is really great for testing. So you can see if I click on the screen, it highlights this area because that's interactive. So it tells you that this piece is interactive. Click on this to see what happens.
All right. Again, people that are here live, we want your questions, so keep them coming. I have a question. How long do you feel like it took you to get a good grasp of this? I know obviously you're probably well versed in Adobe products. How long, what's the learning curve like on this in your opinion?
Yeah, so I think that's the biggest benefit that I have. I'm so familiar with Adobe products, and I'm familiar with similar tools. So there's another tool called Sketch that's similar to Adobe XD, which I started out in, and then Adobe XD came on board, and I was like, well, I'm a huge Adobe like product user, and the great thing about like what they do is they integrate all their products together, so it makes your workflow so much easier. So for me, it was knowing their products before, and then it was also the Sketch element, like knowing how to use that. So it was rather easy for me, but there's so many great resources out there. Like I still took a LinkedIn course, LinkedIn Learning. There's one out there. I think it's with Demian something or another. There's a really great course on Skillshare, amazing. But I think this guy named Daniel Scott, it's phenomenal. They've got a new site, I think, by Howard Pinsky, who works at Adobe, which has like little short 1-minute videos. So there's like endless amounts of resources out there and files to deconstruct. So it's really, even if I didn't know Adobe products and I didn't know UI tools, I think it would be pretty easy to pick up after, doing some of those things.
Right. I have another question. Can more than one user be in at a time to review and comment?
Yeah, more than one user can be in at a time to review and comment. And they just added this new feature too, where everything syncs to the cloud. So I can share with Cara, and she can see me updating it live too, like in the actual document itself, not even just in a review. So there's going to be more of that. And I think something that I heard from just like other people, it seemed like they were working on something where two people can be designing at once, like be in the same document. but I'm not 100% sure on that. I could have sworn some people were like talking about that.
Okay, cool stuff. Looks like, let me see. It looks like we just got another question. They just keep so does the project save to the cloud, or do you have to download it? And I got you as soon as you're taking a drink.
I feel like I need my coffee. I'm a coffee fiend. If anyone knows me, like they know I love my coffee. So I can show you this really quick. So this is really important to me because I was working on a project in a cafe like 2 years ago. I was like a year and a half ago. And I dropped my computer and I didn't have anything backed up to the cloud because all my storage I like maxed out on it. So they have this feature now where it just auto saves to the cloud, but you can choose to save it to your desktop if you want. So you can do cloud documents or your computer. And then when it saves to the cloud, it auto saves. So you don't have to continuously press save. It just keeps auto saving. But I'm like in this habit. I'm like Command S. I'm on a Mac, so I'm like Command S because I'm just so in the habit. But you don't even have to do that, which is great. Yeah, so I can do invite to edit. This is what I was talking about. So if I want someone else to edit the document too, I can invite them.
That's so cool. Looks like Shiashi is talking about he likes the ability to copy properties like hex code. So it sounds he likes it because it's kind of a one-stop shop. You're not going off and doing a bunch of different things. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's really great. There's just so many things that make it like so much more scalable. So if I'm in here or even in the development mode, I can just go here and copy this directly from here. And then I've got this thing called symbols. So symbols are assets that you want to reuse across different artboards. So my menu is a symbol here. So if I change this to like bright red, it changes everywhere across all boards. So they've got all these things. Like you don't know these things until you start working in it or you've seen a video or seen someone do it. But there's just things that make your workflow so much easier like this. So like I can change that. Or if I want to change this red up here to like, say like bright green, I can change that and it will change everywhere. So anything that you have on your assets panel, if you change this, it will change across all your boards, which is great. But if you want, also, like you can unlink something. So for instance, if I don't want this menu for some particular reason to be the same as all the others, I can ungroup the symbol for this one. And then say I just still want to change this one to green, all the other ones to green. I can come here and then change all of these to green. Oh wait, sorry. This is still a color. But so say I want to change this to green. Let's see. So that's going to change there and it's going to change across all of these, but this one's not going to change because I ungrouped the symbol for this. So there's really a lot that you can do. Like you just have to think about like what you're going to do before you do it.
I'm going to read between the lines of J-Rock's question here. So I see a lot of, you have different sizes and looks like this integrates in with like Adobe stock, probably Adobe fonts, all that fun stuff.
Oh yeah.
How much of this is drag and drop versus how much of it do you have to code, and does it just depend?
You don't have to code anything. All of it is drag and drop, and it integrates with the Creative Cloud libraries. So you can download images from Adobe stock with the watermark on them, because if you're not sure, like if you want to use something, you can just have the watermark and it will live in here. So for instance, I think I wonder if these have this stock thing on them. Yeah, so these have the stock. So you can save it to your library, put it in, and then once you get approval for like the funding for like the assets or whatever, you can just download it and then it will populate in here. So you can go ahead and just like for images and different things, you can drag and drop them on here. Then you can open them in Photoshop, save them, and then they auto update here. So that's like when I'm talking about all the products working together, this is like a really great example of that. And it's more than just pictures. You can do icons. You could do like different like patterns and things like that. There's just like a lot of integration.
Kim is asking, the images, are they with the free version of XD as well?
You don't get images for free. Let me go to Adobe stock really quick. It's gonna like show like the price of their stock. So like, so I'll show you really quick. So I have credits. I have 53 credits, but I think everyone gets like 10 credits or something like that with their like first thing. So I don't want all this, but I can come here and I can say like exactly what I want. So like I want an isolated picture. This is like video. I don't want video. For some reason it's doing video. Oh, here. I want an isolated picture of a terrarium for some particular reason. I don't know. So I can click on the terrarium here and I can download a preview. I can save, like favorite it to come back to, or I can have a license. So if I want to download a preview, I can do that and it will download here. But I can also do it where I save it to like my library, and then I can pull it from my library too.
Very cool.
I think it's somewhere. And then the other great thing about that is when you have these in here, if you want to go buy it, then you're like, oh, where do I go to buy it? You come over here and it will tell you like what it's called, and then you can just search the same thing. Or I could say like open, I think there's like a way to open it in like license it. Yeah, you can come over here and like license, or I can edit it and I think it's going to open in Photoshop. Yeah. No, I don't want that to happen.
No, that's great. I mean, that makes it so easy, I feel like, to get those images and get them in there. I have another question. How easy is it to implement your XD prototypes into something real? And Kim, you might have to elaborate just a smidge on this. Is it more difficult if you're outside the Adobe tools, like if you're using Storyline instead of Captivate?
Yeah, everyone's been, there's no difference between using it with Storyline and Captivate because Captivate's not part of the Creative Cloud. It's like something separate. For me, I use it more so than anything for like planning my design. Like I want to know before I go into development, like what that's going to look like. And then there's the added bonus of like being able to download like the assets and things like that. But yeah, in Storyline, Captivate, whatnot, I would still have to go through and download all of those and like put them exactly in where I want them in, because there's nothing right now currently that seamlessly integrates with any of those tools from design to development. And I think that's probably a good thing, because I think that while design and development should be integrated in some way, I think it's good to think about them separately too.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think a lot of times if they were integrated, we would probably see crazy stuff.
Yeah, and Jonathan's talking about, PowerPoint can be imported, but it's not it's not seamless is what I'm saying. Like it's like never perfect and it's not easy to update. So that's just like, it's weird. I'm like in this like fan group of, I use PowerPoint for presentations and like that's where it begins and ends. And that's just my particular preference, because it doesn't lend itself well to, I don't think it lends itself well to e-learning, to be honest with you, because like when I'm using something like XD, it lets me to plan the whole entire experience on one board. It lets me see the flow. It lets me be able to know what the user is going to go through. PowerPoint's so linear. It's like I have this slide and then I have to go to the next one, and you can't see everything at once, which it drives me insane. And I honestly, there's like a saying about it's not the tool, it's the designer. And I always thoroughly believed that. I was like, it's the designer. But I think that the tool can really inhibit you. So I think it goes both ways. I think it's not just one or the other.
Yeah, it goes back to garbage in, garbage out, right? It depends on what you put onto it. Joe Ganchi has an interesting question. He exports from XD as SVG and then imports SVG into Captivate, and he's wondering if you've had any experience with that.
I don't have access to Captivate, so I don't. I've done SVG for web, and that works well. And I would guess that it works well. That's a good question. I don't have Captivate, but I have done it for web.
All right. If somebody wants to know what SVG is, do you care to share what that is?
Yeah, hopefully I don't butcher it. It's scalable vector graphic. Let's Google that. I think. I think that's the right.
Nope, that's
Yeah,
it. That's it. You got
yeah.
a resounding yes in the chat. Yes, good job.
I was like, oh my gosh, what if I don't know this on camera?
Hey, coffee power, right? That coffee can really help sometimes.
Yeah, that's the weird thing about live streaming too, because you have so many people watching you and you're like, are they going to judge you based on what you're saying? Yeah.
I get that. I got over that quickly though. You just do. I mean, whatever.
Michael's like, I always judge.
I'm sure he does. I know Shayoshi, he probably does judge me. All right. So what would be one feature that you absolutely say, this is the reason you should do XD? And what is one thing you would say, maybe this isn't the best use of XD? So what's like that one feature for you that really gets your heart fluttering? And then what's the one thing you're like, it's not the best at doing that?
Yeah. So for me, I don't think it's the feature. I think it's just the ability in general to see everything from the whole experience at once. It's not segmented out or linear. It's about like really being able to work across all the boards and then being able to test with users, because like the whole reason that it's there is so that we can build experiences that benefit our users, whether it's learning, whether it's not learning. It's just about those types of experiences and being able to test them. So I think that just being able to do that and to prototype and have someone go through something, and whether you're sending it to them or you're guiding, like standing next to them and saying, hey, like, where would you click to do this thing? I think that's the biggest benefit. And then when you wouldn't use it, for me, is I think people want to use tools for tools' sake sometimes. And I've been guilty of that too in the past, and it's something I try to stay away from. Before you use it, make sure you have a good use case for it. Like if learning's not the right experience, your learning's not the right thing, and like building something isn't the right experience. Like say you're curating things, like that would be a better experience. Like don't just jump into it to use it. Like figure out like why you want to use it before you're going to use it. It's like that shiny object syndrome everyone gets.
It always reminds me of the Snell from Moana, that sings the Shiny song. Every time somebody talks about that, like that song just instantly gets in my head for some reason.
Yeah. I totally feel that.
All right, so let me think about some other things that we can explore with Adobe XD. And guys, we have crab. Thank you. Okay, I stand corrected, J-Rock. Thank you. Is it crab? That is correct. Yes. Okay. Thanks for judging me. I appreciate that. I'm trying to think of like some other things. I guess the one thing that I know a couple people have said they'd like to see is, I know you've been kind of to share your screen, but if you would just kind of go through like each little piece of one of your projects and just show kind of the flow, I think that would also be very beneficial just for people to kind of see how you set it up.
Yeah, I'll show the one that I did on Adobe Live, because I don't think everyone's seen that one. And I think
I love
one's
that one.
Yeah, and Cara contributed to this one, so let me go ahead and
cheese
open
came in handy for once. My cheesy stuff.
It was great. Everyone loved it too, and they were talking about it afterwards. And let me see here. So where's my ice cream? Because this could talk through my flow and like how I've been doing things, because there's a lot on here. So you can see there's so much on here, and like the other great thing is that you can just like zoom in and pan around and just like go crazy and have like a million different artboards. So the first thing that I start with after, I've come up with like, okay, I'm going to build for this particular thing a website. Like this is the thing I know I'm going to build. I know what the purpose is. I know what the features are, what the person should be able to do afterwards, after this is built. So what I do is I start to collect inspiration. So this is what I call like a mood board. I mean, I don't call it that. That's what everyone calls it. So what I do is I go through different websites, and I know what I want like the field to be. I want it to be fun. I want it to be modern. I want it to be like, family friendly ice cream shop. So I go and look for different things. So for instance, I wanted to do a floating menu. So this is called a floating menu. Google does a lot of floating menus in their material design. It's kind of like a web design trend from the past like 2 years. So I decided I want to do that because I think that could add this element of modernity, or I don't know what people say, and like fun. I wanted to have like pastel colors, and I figured like one of the best things you can do is if you have a picture that's going to be like your main picture, you can pick the colors from that. So that's what I did with this. Then let's see. Then after I've got my inspiration and for everything, and it won't be like literally everything, but for a lot of stuff, what I then do is I go and wireframe the experience. So I know what I want in the experience. So this is a wireframe, and this is a low fidelity wireframe. It has the copy in it, but it doesn't have any of the images. So what this is, it's really thinking through the experience for the person, not focusing on the colors or the pictures or all that other stuff. So thinking about like, how is it going to be laid out? How are people going to understand it and interact with it? And I do the same for
the wireframe there, the low fidelity. Is that a template you set up, or is that something already built into the tool?
So what I like to do, I do it in Adobe XD, but I wanted to try this new tool called Whimsical. We can go into Whimsical really quick because I think I have this. And so for my new wedding one, I don't know if it's going to let me. Let's try this.
All right, come on, Whimsical, let her in.
Go ahead. Yeah. So here you can see this. So for my wedding one, I'm doing the wireframing in Adobe XD, and they have wireframing kits. And I actually kind of prefer this more because then you can drag and drop things in. So this is a wireframing kit. So you can take pieces and then copy them over to your artboard. But for Whimsical, if you want to do a really low fidelity one, because there's not a lot of options in what you can do here, you pick a device. So I don't have tablet on here. I can grab a tablet if I wanted to do a tablet like that. Or you could do other ones too. You can have like landscape. And then what I would do is I'd take what's over here, and then I'd start to lay it out for like, what should this look like on tablet? Because when you're working with engineers, you want to think about like what's for the CSS, like what's going to be different across the different devices or whatnot, because it can't look exactly the same. It's not going to scale properly.
And just so I make sure, you build kind of your wireframes in that Whimsical and bring it over. Was that the purpose of Whimsical again?
Yeah, so this is to plan like more so like where everything is going to be positioned, and then I would go into the actual like high fidelity, which is basically like this is high fidelity and this is low fidelity. So the two differences. And then I used Whimsical just for this project, but for my other one that I'm working on now, which is in the kind of low fidelity phase, I'm using the wireframing kit from XD. So you can do wireframing in whatever. You can even wireframe like on paper. It doesn't have to be digital. And then you could bring it in and just, start to lay everything out on your artboards. But it's an important part of the process because I want to focus on the experience before I focus on like what things actually like really look like. And the way that things are laid out is a part of the experience. So like how people are going to find this information, what the information says, that's a part of the experience. And then secondary is like the colors and things like that. Like make sure the colors are accessible, make sure like the buttons that you have, if you have like a call to action button, that it's like bright and it's the one you want people to click on. Like things like that are important, but having the content and the experience the way you want, it's also important.
All right, we have 3 burning questions, so I'll go ahead and get to those real quick. First one is, when you prototype with clients, do you share and view on the desktop or via the mobile, or both, depending on the project or client?
I think it does really depend, because I don't work for like a creative agency. I think it just depends on your work and what your work's doing, and it also depends on like what you're doing. A lot of times I haven't seen designers, because my boyfriend is a developer and he works with a lot of designers. I haven't seen them show both mobile and desktop. I've mostly seen him when he's been working with people in a creative agency, just doing desktop, and then I don't know if they do mobile later or what happens. It just depends on, the place of work you're at and what you find works for you. I don't think there's one way to do anything.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think maybe the question might have been more about functionality. Can you do both? But obviously you can pick whatever it is that you want to do. So cool
yeah,
stuff.
you can do endless. Like you can do every device in the world if you want to do it. You could do like a really weird size, like whatever you want to do, you can do.
Cool. All right. Next question about your mood board. Can people add comments on the mood board too?
Yeah, they can, but you have to put them onto an artboard. I have mine around my artboards, so you can see that they're like kind of floating around. If you put them all onto an artboard, and you can then share that for people to review. And there's like a lot of other tools for mood boarding. I think there's like one called like mood boards specifically. People will like save things to, I don't know if it's like Pocket or like there's different plugins that you can save pictures and things to. Some people use Pinterest. Everyone does things a little bit differently, but it's one of my favorite parts of the project, because it gives me a chance to like explore and look at different sites and think about like what works in this experience. Like, what do I want to bring over from this experience to my experience? Because one of the most important things about UX is creating an experience that people are familiar with, that they understand. You don't want to create something that inhibits them, like because they don't know how to use it.
No, you're right. And when Sean Hickey and I designed Multiple Choice Mayhem, we wanted like a 70s game show, and we thought, well, how are people going to know it's got that 70s vibe? And then that's when Sean had the brilliant idea about building a little retro TV around the storyline, and it just made it so much better because it gave that experience of it being the game show. So I completely agree. I'm a big fan of digging in and diving and looking for inspiration before you pop in. Another question about the responsiveness in XD. So how easy is it to do responsive design in XD or the separate storyboards?
There's not responsive per se. Like you can do the different artboards, and then you can let me show it, because it's very difficult to articulate through using my hands and talking. Okay, so there's not like a responsive design where you have like you just play it and it's responsive. You have to actually make it responsive. So if I duplicate this board and I want to make this section responsive, there's this thing called responsive resize. So what I would do is I'd come over here, which is like create a new artboard iPad, and I want to take this map area to iPad. So if I do this, if I copy this over here, it's too big, look. So you're like, what the heck? So then what I do is there's responsive resize, and I have it on. You can toggle it on and off, and it's on auto. So when I go like this and squish everything, oh, you know what? I don't think it's going to do it for the maps. That's weird. But when I squish everything, it should resize, except for text doesn't resize. Which is, I may have it like double grouped or something. No, I don't. And you always have to make sure too for this that it's on for everything.
All right.
Oh, so you can see there it goes.
Awesome. So a little bit of work, right? A little bit of work to make that happen.
Yeah, it is. And my suggestion too, when you're doing resizes, is it's easier to go from mobile to larger. It's harder to go from large to small. Um, and so a lot of people do mobile first. The also for XD, and I don't know if I'm going to get this right or wrong, but I feel like originally when they started out, it was more geared towards like apps. So now there's like desktop and whatnot, and there probably was before, but more people I noticed were using it for app design. So you'll notice like when you do interactions and things like that, a lot of stuff's on tap, not on hover. There's no on hover. So it's interesting, and a lot of people like will say, yeah, mobile first is the way to go, especially if like a majority of your audience is going to be using something on mobile. You should definitely consider mobile first.
Right. And that actually segues into our next question about the app. So, Molly was wondering how often you use the Adobe XD app versus a computer. What's that look like?
The phone app?
Yeah, I believe that's what she means. Yeah. Or like on a tablet.
I have the phone app, but I've only been using it to view my mobile designs. So if you plug your phone with the app into your computer, there's a little like icon at the top of the Adobe XD program where you can view your actual like design on mobile. I wish I had it. I wish I had it here with me. It would be so cool to show you because it looks exactly like how it would look on mobile. And I just tried it with my new wedding one this weekend, and I went and I showed my boyfriend. I'm like, look how great it looks. It looks so awesome. It looks realistic. Like it looks like a real app or like a real website.
So that works with any phone as long as the app is up to date.
It works with every phone. I know it at least works with iOS. It just says device preview. So that's something I'd have to look into. Oh yeah, it says connect iOS or Android. So it has to be iOS or Android.
Very cool. I love that. Awesome. All right. Well, we have 8 minutes left. I cannot believe how fast today has just flown by. Does anybody have any last minute questions before we sign off? Thank you, Shayashi. Glad you could come by. Any kind of last tips, Mel? Anything you would say to somebody wanting to learn more about this or get started? I know you had some great tips in the beginning about the resources, but kind of any parting words about Adobe XD?
Yeah, I think for anyone, the way that I approach things that's worked really well for me is pick a fun personal project that you want to work on and just like play around. Like don't be afraid of breaking something of like or of it not being good enough. Like it's a process. It took me so long to get to like where I'm at now. Like and I still have so much to learn and like so much to grow in and it's the same with everyone. Like it's not going to be magic and it's not going to happen overnight. Like you get out what you put in. So yeah, so for me it's like endless hours of like toiling around and playing with things like, and I think that's just I think it's a good word of advice for like anything when you're building skills.
And I also think you're a good proponent of sharing your work and working out loud. I mean, I do think that when you put things out there, I know that there's a little bit of a vulnerability that obviously you do to put stuff out there. But in the same token, if you're not open to getting feedback, in my opinion, how do you continue to grow? So I always have commended you for all your work that you put out there for other people to learn and share and grow. I do think that is part of the creative process. It's part of the growing process. And it's something that we should probably do more of as a community so we can all learn together, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it's really difficult, but it's something I feel extremely strongly about doing because I wouldn't be able to develop my skills or I wouldn't continue even working on these projects like if I weren't sharing them and getting feedback on them. Probably it just kind of keeps me moving forward and learning new things. But yeah, like sometimes like I am working on something and I'm like, and I share it and someone says something and I'm like, oh, that sucks. Like, but then I'm like, okay, but what do I need to learn from this? Because like, it's not personal. And you just have to keep in mind, like, it's not personal.
It's hard though. It's hard when that's your baby and you've worked on it and say that. I get it. It's very hard to say it's not personal, but you're right. All right. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn, Melissa Milloway, or Twitter, Mel Milloway, and then my website is melslearninglab.com.
All right. If you want to go ahead and link those down in the chat where people can find you, and I will close out your video, but you'll still be here. So thank you again, Mel. Appreciate everything that you did for us today. You were awesome, awesome, awesome. All right. And that is a wrap. We'll end a little bit early as I don't see any other questions. Next month, we'll be back around, I think the 28th is the next time I'll be on for May, because obviously ATD ICE is going on. So if you're going to ATD ICE, I'd love to meet you there. And then there's also another conference here at the Ohio State University that will be going on in the month of May. So push back just a little bit. Awesome, Myra. Can't wait to always see you there as well. So if you have any suggestions for me, because this particular show segment is about learning technologies, what do you guys want to learn about? What do you want to see? Who do you want to hear from? Send me suggestions and I will try to get those people to come on and talk about learning technologies. So again, please feel free to drop me any suggestions. Thank you again for being here and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.